Hey everyone, welcome. Today, we're going to dive into a really powerful idea that completely changes how we think about success, especially for public organizations. We're moving beyond just dollars and cents to a new, and I think much more meaningful bottom line.
Okay, think about this for a second. We all know how to measure a bookstore's profit, right? It's just sales minus costs. Simple. But what about a public library, or a park, or a fire department? How do you possibly measure their profit? This one question gets right to a massive challenge at the very heart of the public sector.
And that challenge means we need a new way to think, a new way to measure success that goes beyond the traditional bottom line.
I mean, a school's main goal isn't profit, it's educating our kids. A police department's goal is public safety. So, if their success isn't something you can just find on a balance sheet, how can public managers, or any of us really, know if they're actually doing a good job?
Well, that brings us to the big idea for today: public value. It's a whole new lens for measuring success in the public sphere. So let's define it. So what is public value exactly? The term was coined by Harvard professor Mark Moore, and you can basically think of it as the public sector's answer to shareholder value. The goal isn't to create wealth for a few investors, but to create real, tangible value for all of society, for the common good.
And this quote from Moore himself just draws the perfect parallel, doesn't it? It's a fundamental shift in thinking. It says a public manager's job isn't just to run things, it's to actively create value for the public they serve.
When you put the two concepts side by side like this, the differences are just crystal clear. Private value is all about shareholders and is measured by money. But public value, that focuses on all of us, citizens and society. Its goal is societal well-being, and it's measured by things like positive outcomes and public trust.
Okay, so this all sounds great in theory, but how do you actually create public value? That's where this really useful tool comes in. It's called the Strategic Triangle, and it's a blueprint for action.
The Strategic Triangle is a super practical tool. It's designed to help leaders take a step back, analyze their situation, spot opportunities they might be missing, and then come up with a concrete plan.
Now, I like to think of it as a three-legged stool. For any public project to be stable and successful, all three of these legs have to be in balance. You've got to clearly define the value you want to create, you have to get the support and permission to do it, and you need to have the actual ability to get it done.
So that first leg is the value proposition. This is basically your mission. It's asking, what specific social condition are we trying to improve here? You're not just running a service, you're aiming for a tangible, positive outcome for the public.
Second, you absolutely need legitimacy and support. This comes from what's called your authorizing environment. We're talking about voters, taxpayers, government agencies, even the media. Without their trust and support, you simply won't get the resources you need to act. It's that important.
And finally, the third leg, operational capacity. This is the nuts and bolts. It's the ultimate reality check. Do you have the right staff, the right budget, the right technology, and the right processes in place? It all boils down to one simple question. Can we actually deliver on our promise?
All right, let's see how this all works in the real world. We're going to go back to our library example with a fantastic case study of public value in action.
So here's the situation. Every afternoon, a town library was getting filled with noisy, pretty chaotic, latchkey kids whose parents were still at work.
Now, the librarian's first reaction, which is completely understandable, was to see this as a problem. It really felt like parents were just using the library as an unofficial daycare, and it was getting in the way of the library's real job of managing books.
But then she had this absolutely brilliant shift in perspective. She stopped asking, how do I stop this? And started asking, what value can we create here? She reframed the library's entire purpose. It wasn't just a place for books anymore. It was an indoor park for the community.
And just look at the public value that was created. The library was now providing social care, it was a safe space for kids, it was fostering knowledge, and it was strengthening the entire community. And the best part? All of this came from a simple change in mindset, with no new budget.
This brings us right back to that critical question. If we're creating these amazing things like community cohesion, how in the world do we actually measure that?
And you know what? The honest answer is, it's not easy. Not at all. Unlike profit, you can't just put a single number on trust or well-being. This is a major challenge, for sure, but it's not an unsolvable one.
Researchers have suggested a framework that looks at 4 key areas:
To really measure public value, you have to look at the actual outcomes, the level of public trust and legitimacy, the quality of the service, and of course, efficiency. Real value is created when all of these pieces are working together.
So, as we wrap up here, it's pretty clear that this idea is about so much more than just government. It's really about a new purpose for leadership itself.
Ultimately, creating public value is a mindset. It's for any leader in any sector who wants their work to have a positive impact that goes way beyond the bottom line. It's about asking that powerful question: how can my organization contribute meaningfully to our community and to society as a whole?
So I'll leave you with this. Take a look at the organizations in your own community. Using this framework we've talked about, what public value are they creating? And maybe even more interesting, what opportunities might they be missing? Thanks so much for watching.
So, have you ever wondered what really makes a government service valuable? Beyond just the budget sheets, how do public administrators decide what's genuinely good for society? Today, we're diving into something called public value theory and its measurement in public administration. It's a really critical idea that helps shape how government works for us, the citizens. We're exploring a field that's, well, full of fascinating insights, and we'll introduce you to the key figure behind it all, Harvard professor Mark Moore. Okay, let's get into the heart of it.
Indeed. Public value really emerged as a significant alternative to the traditional ways of thinking about government. It asks a fundamental question beyond just being effective and, efficient. What actual value are public managers creating for citizens through their work? So this deep dive will explore its origins, the various ways it's understood, how it's created, and crucially, the ongoing challenge of measuring something so complex, really. We'll be drawing on research from places like Harvard, University of Pretoria, and real-world applications, too, to give you a full picture.
Right, let's rewind then, back to the beginning. So public value, or PV, it started taking shape as a kind of management approach for the public sector. But it was Mark Moore, wasn't it, with his groundbreaking 1995 work, Creating Public Value, who really put it on the map.
Exactly. And here's the real pivot point. Public value emerged as a direct challenge to something called New Public Management, or NPM.
Ah, NPM. I've heard that term. What was that all about? Sort of government trying to be a business.
Pretty much, yeah. Imagine government trying to run exactly like a business. NPM prioritized economic individualism, treating citizens almost like, well, customers. It focused a lot on outsourcing, market mechanisms, really elevating the individual over the collective good.
So like a public library isn't just a community hub, it's just a service provider with a bottom line.
That's the kind of thinking, yes. And public value fundamentally challenged that perspective. It rooted public administration firmly back in the societal component, not just economics. PV theory champions a public admin that's, democratic, cooperative, emphasizing genuine governance.
Governance meaning shared responsibility, collaboration.
Precisely. It broadens the focus beyond just efficiency to include fundamental principles like objectivity, equality, democracy, justice. What's fascinating here, I think, is the insistence on collaboration and engagement. Decisions are seen as legitimate only when stakeholders, especially you, the citizen, have a voice. Public value goals get shaped through ongoing discussions, negotiations. It really puts you at the center.
Okay, so it was definitely a reaction against NPM. But what is public value then? It sounds big.
It is, and like trying to pin down a shimmering diamond, there's no single neat definition. Different experts sort of catch different facets.
Right.
For instance, researchers like Kelly, Mulgan, and Mears define it as the value created by government through services, laws, regulation, and other actions. They stress it comes from how communities express their needs, and it absolutely needs fairness and trust.
Trust again. Seems crucial.
It is. Moore's own definition focuses more on managerial success in initiating and reshaping public sector enterprises in ways that increase their value to the public. He sees public managers almost as pioneers, actively uncovering and creating this value.
Pioneers. Interesting.
But then, beyond just individual management, you have others like Bozeman focusing on the policy or societal level.
Yeah.
He looks at the public values of a nation, thinking about collective ideals, not just individual services.
Oh, bigger picture values.
Exactly. Things like citizens' rights and responsibilities, the core beliefs policies should be built on. But crucially, whether it's individual or national level, the core idea is that it's you, the citizenry, who ultimately define public value. Public officials are instrumental, sure, but it's shaped by what citizens want and believe.
So officials create it, but we define it.
In essence, yes. And someone like Herder simplifies it for managers into three key things: effectiveness, quality, and legitimacy. Means you need accountability, you need engagement with citizens, and you need to stick to legal and democratic principles.
Okay, that makes sense. So we've talked what it is, but the big question for anyone, on the ground is how? How do you actually make it happen? Does Moore give us a practical framework?
He absolutely does. Mark Moore gave managers a really practical tool: the strategic triangle.
Strategic triangle, okay.
Think of it like a blueprint, right, for creating public value. It urges public managers to stop and deliberately consider three key interconnected ideas before starting anything.
3 ideas. What are they?
First, what significant public value does the entity actually want to create? This is often called the task environment.
The task environment, right? The problem to solve. Better health, cleaner air.
Exactly. The specific social conditions you want to improve. Second, what sources of legitimacy and support do you need to empower the entity and keep it going? That's the authorizing environment.
Legitimacy and support.
Yeah.
That's like politics, public opinion, maybe funding approvals.
All of that, yes.
Mm.
And third, what operational capabilities, the resources like people, tech, money, does the entity need to actually deliver its goal?
Right, the practical how-to part. People, budget, tools.
Precisely. And the core challenge, which came up in a roundtable with Professor Moore in New Zealand, is making sure all 3 points of this triangle line up. They have to reinforce each other.
Alignment is key then.
Absolutely. So the task environment, that's assessing the conditions to improve, focusing on individual needs, what society values. The authorizing environment includes everyone who can hold the organization accountable and control resources. That means you as voters, taxpayers, but also advocacy groups, the press, elected officials.
So a broad group of stakeholders.
They're a very broad group. And then operational capacity is just having the people, time, resources to execute the whole value chain.
The value chain, the steps from idea to outcome.
Yeah, basically the sequence of activities that adds value. And often this means partnering up with other government parts, nonprofits, even the private sector.
Okay, so what happens if they're not aligned? That triangle sounds like it could easily wobble.
It can. Think about it. If you have lots of legitimacy and support, everyone agrees it's a good idea, but no operational capability.
Oh.
You've got a big hat and no cattle, as they say. All talk, no action. You can't actually do anything.
Right. Lots of promises, no delivery.
Or,
Right.
flip side, you have great capabilities, skilled people, budget, but no real alignment on what value you're supposed to be creating. You might just keep pouring resources into activities that don't really matter anymore, or maybe never did. That's been called dead donors.
Dead donors.
Yeah.
Funding things that aren't valuable anymore. I can see how that happens.
Yeah.
But you mentioned criticisms earlier. Rhodes and Wana said it might be all things to all people and maybe gives managers too much power, not enough focus on elected officials.
That's a very fair point, and it is a criticism Moore's theory has faced. That it can feel a bit too broad, maybe overemphasizes the role of unelected managers.
So how does the theory handle that, the democratic accountability part?
Well, the theory tries to build it in through that authorizing environment. Remember, you as a voter and your elected representatives are part of that environment. The idea is that managers create public value, which has to be legitimized by public consent, often through those democratic processes. It's meant to be an ongoing dialogue within the framework, not managers acting alone.
Okay, so the authorization part is meant to keep it grounded in democratic will. All right, so creating it is one challenge using the triangle. But then how do you know if you're actually succeeding? Measuring this stuff sounds really hard.
Exactly. And Moore himself stressed this. You need to analyze and measure the value created. But the challenge is clear. As Faulkner and Kaufman put it, there's no concrete method to measure the public value produced by an organization. Another study called it elusive, with little attention.
Elusive? That doesn't sound promising for measurement. Why bother trying to measure it then, if it's so tough?
Well, Moore gives 3 really crucial reasons. First, to meet external accountability demands people want to know what they're getting for their taxes, right?
Makes sense.
Second, to establish a clear mission and goal for the organization itself. Measurement helps clarify purpose. And third, to foster a strong sense of internal accountability. Knowing what success looks like helps everyone work towards it.
Okay, accountability, mission clarity, internal drive. Got it. So what have people tried? Any measurement tools out there?
There have been attempts, and they show just how difficult it is. Moore himself developed a public value scorecard, adapting the business balance scorecard idea. Meinhardt later proposed another version with a psychological basis.
Scorecards. like ticking boxes.
Sort of, but trying to capture more than just financial metrics. They tracked outcomes, different dimensions of value, but they faced criticism. Some said Moore's was just his triangle again. Meinhardt's was seen as maybe too US-centric or didn't fully consider organizational systems.
So early attempts had issues.
Yeah, and if we connect this to the bigger picture, the court challenge often comes down to something called the delivery paradox.
Delivery paradox. What's it?
That's where your quantitative metrics, the numbers, might show improvement, say, permits processed faster.
Okay.
But your perception as a citizen, your feeling about the service quality, doesn't necessarily improve along with it. Maybe the faster process felt impersonal or confusing or unfair, so your sense of value didn't actually go up.
Ah, I see. The numbers look good, but the experience doesn't feel better. Those intangible things, equity, trust, feeling involved, they're super hard to quantify, aren't they?
Notoriously hard.
So are we stuck then? Is measuring public value just too elusive?
Not entirely. Despite the hurdles, progress is being made. A really useful systematic review by Faulkner and Kaufman offers a more robust framework. This is where it gets interesting for actually doing it. They identified 4 central elements that seem essential for measuring public value, and they seem widely applicable.
Okay, 4 essential elements. What are they?
First, outcome achievement. This is basically asking, is the public sector delivering results you actually value?
Like the common good, fairness, social cohesion, access to knowledge.
Exactly those kinds of things. Second, trust and legitimacy.
Back to trust.
Always. How much do citizens and stakeholders perceive the organization and its actions as legitimate, as truthful? This includes accountability, dialogue, responsiveness, integrity, real citizen involvement. Third, service delivery quality. How well do services actually accommodate your needs? Are they provided in the best way possible?
So user-friendliness, reliability, adaptability, being
Yeah.
consulted properly.
Yes, all that. And finally, fourth, efficiency.
The traditional one.
It's still important. How well does the organization achieve the best results for citizens with limited resources? So value for money, avoiding needless red tape, innovation, productivity.
Okay, so outcomes, trust, service quality, and efficiency. That feels comprehensive, more graspable.
It does, doesn't it? It offers a powerful lens. And interestingly, these 4 themes line up quite closely with foundational categories identified way back by Kelly and others: services, outcomes, trust. They give a more concrete path for research and, importantly, for practical application.
And you said it's not just government using this. Private companies, too.
Yeah, that's fascinating. Entities like Fresenius Medical Care, the German medical supplies firm, and even the football club, FC Bayern Munich.
A football club. Seriously.
Seriously. They're using public value concepts and scorecards to understand and show their contribution to society beyond just the financial bottom line. They're asking, what value do we create for the wider community, not just shareholders or fans?
Wow. Okay, that broadens the scope quite a bit.
Yeah,
So these aren't just dusty academic theories then. People are actively using this stuff.
definitely. Mark Moore himself still leads practical programs at Harvard Kennedy School, things like leadership, creating public value, and strategic leadership in government. These courses teach managers exactly this: how to diagnose their environment, think strategically about creating value, develop metrics, and it's all centered on you, the individual citizen, as the rightful authorizer, the essential partner, the ultimate client of government. They look at how government can use all its interactions with you to actually engage you in democratic governance.
Engaging citizens more directly. Which brings us back to leadership, doesn't it? Ethical leadership must be huge here.
Foundational. Absolutely foundational. Ethical leadership grounded in honesty, justice, respect, integrity, responsibility, transparency. That's what builds the trust needed for effective governance. Leaders who prioritize these ensure decisions are made in the public's best interest. It reinforces the legitimacy, the credibility of public institutions.
And does that help address those earlier criticisms about democratic accountability, about unelected managers having too much sway?
It directly addresses them by embedding ethical principles, by emphasizing collaboration, transparency, real citizen engagement. Public value theory, when practiced ethically, tries to ensure decisions actually reflect what the people prefer. It also empowers employees inside organizations to speak up about problems, preventing those big hat, no cattle, or dead donor scenarios we talked about. It makes the whole conversation more robust, more honest.
Right, ethics is the guardrails. Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground. Our deep dive took us from the origins of public value, that reaction to NPM, through all the different ways people define it, Moore's strategic triangle toolkit, and this really tricky quest to measure its impact. And one thread seems to run through it all: the indispensable role of the public, of you, in defining value, legitimizing it, and ultimately being the one who benefits. So what does this all mean for you listening right now?
Well, public value theory is still evolving, isn't it? It's constantly adapting. Think about the rise of the digital public on social media. That's a whole new context. Perhaps the ultimate takeaway for you is that public value isn't some fixed, static thing. It's a dynamic, ongoing dialogue. It's not just about what government delivers, but how it fosters that continuous conversation about what a fair, just, and good society actually means for all of us.
A conversation, not just a transaction.
Exactly. So as you engage with public services or watch policy decisions unfold, maybe take a moment to consider what public value is really being created here. And perhaps more importantly, how might your voice, your perspective, contribute to defining and realizing that value?